Today's project, we're going to be removing the transmission from a 2013 Chrysler Town & Country. This is the same process on the Town & Country from years 2011 to 2016, and likewise on the Dodge Caravan all the way up to 2020. Now, if you've never done this before, it might seem like a pretty intimidating job, but it's really not that hard, especially on these vans because you have a lot of room down there. Let me show you how you can very easily do this yourself at home. To get started, we'll remove the engine cover, disconnect the battery, and also remove the battery tray. And these are just going to be a 10 mil. Then also remove the 13 down here holding the battery down. Then remove the battery. To remove the tray, we just have a couple 13 mil bolts here. Just make sure you also release this wiring held on the side on all four corners. And after you get those three bolts loosened up, our tray should pop right out of here. Next, remove the vacuum pump here. So you just got a couple 10 mil there, electrical connector, and just release that vacuum hose. I'm not sure why that connection is not coming off there, so I'm not going to mess with it and break it. So I'm just going to remove this and set it to the side. Just make sure you don't lose that nut. It's on the bottom there. And we should be able to set this to the side. Next, remove this bracket, and it looks like we just got a couple 13 mil down there. Then remove the bracket. Next, we're going to remove these two transmission cooler lines. You just have this dust shield on the top. Just pry that back. And they make a transmission cooler line tool that will snap in here and snap this out very easily. If you don't have that, you can also pry this little clip right here back. Just be careful when you pry that out that you do not lose it. So right there we have it pried out. And there we just removed it. So now that you have that removed, you should be able to pull this straight out like that. Then we'll do the same thing on this other one here. Then pull that one out as well. Then disconnect our shift cable here. Then we'll also remove the bracket back there. And to get this disconnected back here, so just first release that clip, then you're going to push these two sides in. Then push it back until you get it to this part here, then you should be able to pull it up. Just like that. Then we'll just set this off to the side for now. Then disconnect this plug here. And also this one here. To get this one released, you're going to gently pry up on this little lever here. You'll push it back, and as you're pushing it back, that'll slowly come off the end. Alright, so once you got that pop loose, then you should be able to just rotate it forward like that. And then it should come right off. And disconnect some of this wiring harness off the transmission. So you have one here, there's one down here, then also this one in the back there. Next we're going to be removing the drive shafts from the transmission. So the first thing we need to do is remove the wheel, and this is just going to be a 19 mil. Next we're going to be removing the axle nut, and this is just going to be a 32 mil. I have a whole gear wrench set. I think it was only like $30 or $40 I bought years ago, but if you don't have one of these, you can always rent one at a local auto parts store. And it's typically best if you put a little PB blaster on here first, just kind of help that come off. And if you don't have an impact, you can put a screwdriver in these fins and you can hold it if you're going to be using a breaker bar, or have somebody go inside there and apply the brakes, and it'll keep this from spinning. But in my case here, I'm just going to use my Milwaukee impact. Then we're going to be removing the brake caliper assembly here, and you just have two 21 mil bolts. Just make sure when you loosen them up, take a brake caliper hanger or something and hang it up over here on the strut to get it out of the way. You just don't want to put an unnecessary bind on that hose back there. Then set our rotor aside. Then we'll remove the two bolts here holding our strut to our knuckle here, and these are just going to be a 21 mil. Then to get these off, what I typically do is thread that nut back on there so it's flush with the end. And take a hammer and pound it out. And you can remove the nut, and those should slide out. Then we'll disconnect this speed sensor wiring here, just to give us a little bit more room here. And we should be able to pull this out like that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to push our axle out of our wheel hub. Now sometimes these get stuck. As you can see on this one, it is free. If yours is stuck, you have a couple different options. The first is take a block of wood right here, because you don't want to damage those threads, and take a hammer and hit on the end, and usually it'll pop it loose. If that doesn't work, you're going to have to use one of these hub pullers, and what you can do is you can thread that in there and that will push it out. I have saw an occasion where these won't even work, and this is a good quality OTC version I have. I have another OTC 20-ton version that I've had to use as well, where you get this on here, because what happens is sometimes this axle will seize up to this hub and you will not be able to get it off. That OTC version, I'll put some links in the description. I've had to work on a couple of these vans where I had to resort to that. So it looks like we did get lucky here, and this one is going to push out. So we'll go ahead and just push it out, and then we'll be able to set it to the side. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the transmission side out. So all you got to do here is just take a screwdriver or a pry bar and pry gently against the case. You just don't want to pry against that seal there, then it will pop out past that ring. All right, so then once it pops loose, then you should be able to slide it straight out. The passenger side, you first need to disconnect our axle here from our intermediate shaft back here, and what you need to do is just go right here and pry against it and pry it out, and just make sure before you do that you're holding the other end so you don't drop this axle. All right, so once you get it pop looser like that, then it should slide right out. Then we need to remove this mid shaft bearing here that's attached to the block. So you just got 3 16 mil bolts. So I think there's one here, one on the back side, then there should be one on the top. Once that bracket comes off, then we should be able to slide the intermediate shaft out of the transmission. Now it looks like in order to get that off, we also have to remove this heat shield right here. So here's a close-up of the heat shield that I'm talking about, and I just went ahead and removed it so you can see it, but it's just tucked up in there. If you don't get this either bent out of the way or removed, you're not going to be able to get that mid-bearing bracket out of there. So now that we have that heat shield removed, we should just be able to pull that intermediate shaft straight out of the transmission. Next we'll remove this splash shield in the way, and it just looks like we got a couple push pins here. We'll remove these, and we should just be able to remove this bottom section. And there's also a 10 mil up top here. Then over here on the driver's side, disconnect both of these sensors here. Now we're ready to remove the crossmember support underneath the vehicle, and we have a couple of transmission mounts that we're also going to be removing. But before we do that, we must make sure this engine's supported. I have my engine support bar back there. If you're not familiar with those, they come in handy for jobs like this. I do a separate video, see the link above on how you can use these. They're relatively cheap. They're only like $60, $70, and I'll put a link in the description to this one. If you don't want to buy one of these, you can also use a floor jack underneath the engine pan. Just make sure you use a board the complete width of the engine pan. You just don't want to put your jack centered in the engine pan because you can damage it. A lot of times when I do this, I would do the support bar and the engine support underneath with the jack at the same time initially when I get it released. Once I verify that everything's released and the support up here is holding good, then I'll remove the jack just for extra precaution when I'm underneath the vehicle. Now that we have the engine supported, we'll first remove this through bolt here, and this is going to be a 15. Next, we're going to be removing these bolts. We got a couple 16s, here's an 18, and we got 3 more 16s in the back. Actually, I think I'm just going to leave those 2 on there because it's just this mount, and we'll let that come down together, and we'll just loosen up the ones in the back. Alright, so I had a feeling that was going to happen there. I don't know if that thing was cross-set or not, but it was in there pretty tight. So we'll just have to drill that out. But we do have the cross support out of here. So now we'll go ahead and remove this mount here. And to remove this, we're just going to have 3 16 mil. So one here, and one over here. And after you remove that last bolt, and the bracket should slide out. Moving on to the rear engine mount, we need to remove those 4 16 mil bolts back there. So there's a couple there, and there's one on the side as well. Just remove those, and we'll be able to set that aside. And that's going to release the engine mount there that's holding on to our transmission down here. And for this mount, the top 3 are pretty straightforward that I just showed you. The only one that's kind of tricky is this one here on the bottom here. And you're probably going to need a ratcheting 18 mil or pass-through socket or something because you don't have much clearance here because of that heat shield. But eventually, with a little persuasion, you'll get it out of there. Next, remove the starter, and we're just going to have 3 15 mil bolts here. And the manual says to just set it aside, but I might disconnect it as well. We'll see how much leeway we have to move this around. Looks like we do have a push pin here with a wire loom on there. So we'll just disconnect that from the transmission as well, and we'll see if we can set it aside here. right, so once we got it sitting out, we'll just leave it right there. Now I'm ready to remove the torque converter bolts, and you're just going to first just remove this little shield here, and I'll give you access to those bolts behind this. And this is one thing I got to give Dodge credit for. This is a lot easier than fighting through starter holes like some other motors. And right there is one of our torque converter bolts. So we should have 4 on here. So what you need to do is go over there on the crankshaft side, and you're going to slowly rotate it until you get each one of these holes exposed here where that torque converter bolt's there. You're going to zip that off. You're probably going to need to use either a helper to hold the crankshaft from moving over there, or prop it up against something on the frame over there to keep it from moving. But once you get one of them moved, rotate around, get the next one, and do that and get all 4 of them removed. So now that we have the crankshaft over there supported, and that is a fairly large bolt on the other end, it's a 27 mil that you're going to need over there. Then we'll take our 18 here, and we should be able to loosen up this torque converter bolt. All right, so there's the first one. So then we'll rotate the motor around to the second one. Okay, so there's our next one. So we'll lock our ratchet in place again. All right, so then there's our second one there. Just repeat that process for all 4, and I'll show you here on the other side of what I'm doing to rotate that real quick. So here's the setup that I'm using here, and you can see I have my ratchet, my 27 mil there, and I have a little bit of an extension here, just holding it in place, and that's what I'm using for the leverage in order to release the bolts. Then slowly start rotating this until you see the next bolt over here. Okay, so we have our next bolt lined up over here, so we'll go ahead and lock it in place again. So then just do that same process for all 4 of those bolts, then you're done with the torque converter. All right, so now with our transmission jack under there, if you notice I do also have a ratchet strap on there just for extra precaution, because these things are pretty lopsided once they start coming out of here. We're going to go up top, we're going to remove that last transmission mount up there, the couple bolts, then we're going to start removing the bell housing bolts as well, then this thing should slide right out of here. All right, so here is our mount, and I believe we're just going to be able to release this 18, and there's an 18 back here, and we'll be able to drop this down. The problem is with this bracket, you got a couple bolts on the bottom down here, and without the transmission being rotated or lowered a little bit, it's impossible to get in there and get something out of there, get those out. So I'm hoping we can just remove these 2, leave the bracket on there, and drop it out, but we'll see here in a minute. Next, remove the 2 bell housing bolts up here. So we have one 15 here, then you have that 15 down there with that stud.
All right, so I'm moving back here to the bottom, and then our last couple bolts here, we just got 5 bell housing bolts here, and you got a 6th one tucked up over there on the side. After those are removed, then we should be able to break our transmission loose from our engine. Again, make sure you have everything supported down here before you do this. All right, so now that we got the bolts out, sometimes these will just crack loose. Doesn't look like ours wants to. They do have a couple holes there, but I'd be very careful in prying anything down in there because you got your flex plate right there. But if you do any hitting with a board and a hammer, just focus on the transmission side because we are going to be replacing that. But if that doesn't work, you can always gently pry against the case a little bit and eventually it will break loose. And what you're fighting in there is there's going to be those dowel pins in there. And a lot of times those get kind of corroded and stuck in there. But after you just gently wiggle it a little bit, as you can see, it's slowly starting to come out of there. All right, so there's that dowel pin that I was talking about. So all right, so now we're free. So now we should be able to lower it out of there. Just make sure when you're lowering this that you're not bringing any wires or hoses or anything down with you. But once you're clear on everything, you should be able to just slowly start lowering the transmission out of the vehicle. Alright, so once you got it fully released from the car there, then just rotate it over here and get it out of the driver's side. Alright, well here is our end result. We have our transmission out. I know this might seem like an intimidating job, but if you follow some of the steps and pointers I'd mentioned during the video, you can very easily do this yourself at home. This is probably one of the easier transmissions or engine removals you're going to do on a vehicle because you have that much room. So if you're on the fence whether if you can do this or not, I'm confident you can have good success doing this. Just follow the steps I did today and you'll get it out just like we did over here. Alright, so hopefully this helped you out. If it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out and thanks for watching.